Preliminary research shows that South Africa has one of the highest number of cabinet ministers in relation to its population. The country is ranked second, with more than double the number of ministers of countries 8 to 20 times our size. Well, President Cyril Ramaphosa has tasked the Minister of Public Services and Administration, Ayanda Dlodlo, to look into the issue. The Minister joins us now to discuss it. Minister, good evening. Thanks very much for your time. Well, from what the President said in Parliament in February last year, the review was supposed to take months. What happened?
Well,
it's been a year since he said that.
We have done our work. We just need to present what we have done to the President so that he can give further guidance. What we look at as a department is the Public Service Regulations and the Public Service Act, which gives us the responsibility to provide advice to the President on the configuration of government. And it was really based on the Public Service Act that the President then asked us to look into this. You must remember that it's not just about the number of departments, hence it's a study that would take much longer than what the ordinary public or people that are not involved in the process would envisage. It would take much longer because the issue is about the whole machinations, the machinery of government in general. Slicing it up into different pieces to ensure that you have a structure that speaks to the mandate of your government as per the Constitution, but also in our case now, we also have the National Development Plan.
Just, from the preliminary study that has been done, the numbers are quite, in fact, it's a very anomalous situation because, we're looking at China, for example, which has 1.4 billion people and only 21 members of the cabinet. The United States has about 368 million people and has 15 cabinet ministers. But whatever sort of measure you look at, we come out looking like really crazy. I'm looking at Tanzania, 60 million people, which is very close to us. There again, the country has 21 cabinet ministers. Did that shock you when you came across those numbers?
Well, you must remember, Vuyo, that this new cabinet came about as a result of work that had been done with respect to a new program of government that was adopted, which was the National Development Plan. That's the one thing. So what would inform the number of cabinet ministers or departments would really be dependent on what policies and programs are in place for any government. Secondly, you are quoting very, very old democracies that do not have the type of issues that we have as a country, where we still had to start to ensure that black people have access to electricity, have access to water, have access to housing facilities, opportunities. So there's a whole host of things that established democracies, hurdles that have already gone through. We still had to do a lot of the things that other countries were miles ahead of us.
But is that what those in charge, or who were in charge of previous administrations, have told you? Because I would imagine that when you went about doing this exercise, you would have consulted those who were in charge then. And maybe they would have given you their reasons as to why, this cabinet on its own jumped from 27 in 1994 to 35 this past administration.
You must remember that in 1994, we didn't have all of the issues that we've experienced over time. We didn't have a national development plan. We didn't have the SDGs. We didn't have a whole host of things that we needed to put in place. But you must also remember that I am just less than a year in my position, and my predecessor was also less than a year in her position. So she gave me the handover. I didn't ask the questions as to how the previous cabinet or the previous president or the previous minister got to a figure of 35 as opposed to 20 or 16 or whatever figure it would have been. She would not have known, and I certainly did not know.
And
But
she didn't ask her boss?
No, I didn't ask. I mean, I didn't go back to the deputy president the current president who was deputy president at that time to say, what informed you and the president on this? I didn't do that. What I'm doing now is concentrating on what I need to do to properly advise. The ultimate decision will be the president's. All I need to do is to present to him the machinery of government, how it's supposed to operate, given the dynamics that we're dealing with in our country today, lack of access to certain facilities, lack of access to the economy, and all sorts of things that our people still need to feel in a new democracy. So my advice will be based on what the Constitution says, what the SDGs would say, what Vision 2063 would say, the current environment of unemployment, inequality would say, and all of those other issues. The number of departments would be based on what the Constitution says, and that's what I'm concentrating.
Now, from the study that you've already done, given the challenges you're saying we still face, which you argue that established democracies that I quoted do not have, do you believe that we need more or less departments than we currently have?
Well, part of our problem is the fact that we struggle with integrated planning. We struggle with foresight planning, your scenario planning, your evidence-based planning. Those are the areas that we struggle with. We have grand policies in place, but the implementation is a problem. And part of the reason why implementation becomes a problem is because of your planning, the way that you plan your planning cycles and the tools that you use to ensure that you plan effectively for implementation.
But
now,
it's not for a shortage of skills, though. It's who those in charge decide to bring on board.
Well, in today's world, we will be facing a shortage of particular skills. You look at the Department of Health currently. KZN has suffered the most with regards to specialists in oncology. And the list goes on in other provinces. So the shortage of skills is there. That's why I periodically say to people, there isn't a bloated public service.
But
it's
Minister,
just an alignment.
Just on that
skills.
example that you are using, for example, when there was a concerted effort, people were found and money had to be found.
In the last interview that I came for here last week, I actually did say, we were talking about engineers and the problems at ESCOM. And I said, I do not believe that we really have a shortage of the necessary skills,
the choices
or the
we
prerequisite skills. It's just that we need to go out there and find them. It's the same thing that we experienced in 1994, when the affirmative action policies were the buzzword of the day, and you were told that we can't find black people. It's the same thing today. We just need to put our best foot forward in trying to find those skills to bring them in. But again, going back to the issue of planning, if we have an integrated system, it should also inform the way that you configure departments, you configure ministries, to ensure that if you have a set of deliverables, a set of outcomes, those outcomes should really fall under a particular department or a particular entity. When we look at the center of government, we look at the center of government, which really is the presidency, in a sense, that has all the components of ensuring that the administration or the public service itself is fully functional and optimally functional. So you would have your government communications information system, which is about communicating the work of government, but also interacting with the public and bringing on board the views of the public.
But Minister, did you do any comparative studies to say a lot of countries on the continent,
we did.
to say when they were at our stage of development, how did they do it? Did they have bigger, smaller numbers than we currently have?
We looked at the demographics. We did do a comparative study. It was desktop. We didn't visit any countries, and we're still looking at that. But we looked at almost all of the countries in the continent. And that's a study that has gone on over many years, which informed where we are today with respect to the work that we've just handed over, that we're going to be handing over to the president. We haven't met with him to say this is what we have. But he, I'm sure, has a relatively good idea of where he wants to take government with respect to the configuration of government. But also, you must remember, when you talk about the macro configuration of government. You could even go further because we have a state president who is also the head of government. You could also go further to say the macro configuration of the state, which is a long-term exercise. But we're only concentrating on the macro configuration of government. Now, if you talk about the macro configuration of government, you would look at a whole host of things. Are our wards, our municipalities, district municipalities, aligned for us to be able to deliver services effectively? Do we need them configured in the way that they are configured currently? There was an ANC resolution not too long ago about whether or not we should reduce the number of provinces. That study still has to be undertaken, and that study needs to form part of this work of the macro configuration of the state. So we're not only looking at numbers, we're looking at how the machinery of government is configured in general, which would take into account all spheres of government, national, provincial, and local government.
But in whatever you're going to present to the president, have you managed to drill it down to, for example, very practical issues like how much, on average, will we be able to save if we cut back on ministers? With each minister, how much will we be able to save the state? And what efficiencies will be, with that, what efficiencies will we be able to bring into the system? Have you been able to get to that point?
But my point is, it's not even about the number of ministers that we have and the amount of money that we would save if we cut down on the number of ministries. For me, the problem is bigger than the number of ministers.
What is the problem?
The problem is about the whole configuration, the macro configuration of government itself, how it operates, how it works, how it plans, how it implements, how it reports back, so that that information then determines what you plan for the next MTF or the next financial year. So it's bigger than just numbers of ministers. It's about the whole machinery of government and how it operates. Obviously, if you cut down on the number of ministers and deputy ministers, you would have huge savings. Because what in essence would happen is that you would save on the number of protectors, you would save on the number of vehicles, you would save on S&T, you would save on a whole host of things.
And don't you agree that that would be at least a start?
I agree with you. It would be a start. And we haven't decided on how many people, because I hear figures being bandied about in the media, which I'm not sure where they come from. We haven't determined the figure to present to the president to say, we think these are the number of ministers or ministries that need to be retained as opposed to the number of departments that need to be retained.
So in a nutshell, what you're going to present to the president now doesn't say reduce or have more. You're just saying this is what you would have to consider.
What he is going to have to consider is what we will present before him to say, for your government to run smoothly, to be more efficient in terms of planning, implementation, and reporting, the following needs to happen. On the numbers...
Does that then go further to say we will need less or more?
Yes, it will. It definitely will.
What will it say, more or less?
Well, I don't know, because, like I say, we are in the process of finalizing our report that we're going to give to the president. But all indications are that it will be less.
When is it supposed to be complete? When is this report supposed to be with the president?
You know, we beef it up as we go every day. But if the president were to call me today to say, come and present it to me, would be able to present a fairly good document that he can be able to work from.
That you think will please South Africans?
But it is work in progress. Even when we do present a fully fledged document to him, at some point we're going to have to be consulting with him, because the establishment of new departments and new ministries also becomes our responsibility.
And you're not going to tiptoe around this issue, because the big party headquartered in the Johannesburg CBD, that's where the pushback will come from, because people will realize that they won't be the big players that they currently are with a big cabinet.
With this process, I must say, I've not gotten any pressure from anybody. Not from Luthuli House, not from my colleagues, not from the president himself. All that has happened is that a task has been placed before me. I have been working around the clock with my team, efficient team, to ensure that we present a credible and a workable document to the president. But I can guarantee you there has been no pressure from my colleagues, from Luthuli House or from government around the numbers that we're looking at. I might be out of a job myself, but the fact of the matter is that I have to ensure that South Africa gets back to where it was in the early days of democracy, or even better for that matter.
So we're going to leave it. Thanks very much for coming through. The Minister responsible for Public Service and Administration, Ayanda Dlodlo.